How do you become a person who is powerful, who is magnetic and charismatic? How do you become someone who is solid in themselves, has a strong inner world, who isn't pushed and pulled by the desires and opinions of other people, who knows who they are and can walk straight into conflict and into their dreams without being overpowered by the expectations or the judgments of other people? I think that a lot of people are searching for this quality. And to understand how to gain this inner solidity, this agency and sovereignty over our own worlds, what we have to understand is one of my favorite topics, which is the concept of psychosocial fields. Now, this is something that you may have typically heard of in the context of the New Age world. But this is not something woo-woo or, mystical and magical. This is based in psychology and sociology. And what a psychosocial field is, or kind of energy field, it's not physics. It has nothing to do with physics. It has nothing to do with invisible waves around us. It has everything to do with the psychological atmosphere or field around a person. Now, what this really is you can imagine that the world around us has all these different physical fields, like the field of gravity. And when you have an object like a planet or a person in that field, you can see that field, that field bends. We can't see it, but we know that it bends the field of space and time around it. So using that as a metaphor, we can think about the psychosocial field in the same way. All around us, we have this field, and when another person, or we, are in that space, we bend the field in that place. Now, the way we bend and affect it is complicated. But essentially, being able to recognize and see these fields and understand how they affect us, how another person's field, psychological and social field, affects us, allows us to then realize how other people are pushing against us, how we are being really, how the world, how the social pressures and expectations of others will direct our lives, either usually in a way that we don't have full control over. And seeing this is the first step to actually then gaining control of it and being able to be free of it so that you can walk forward in a straight line towards the life that is calling you and towards the person that you are called to be. So, right now, you have your own psychic field around you. And what this really means is that if somebody were to walk into the room right now, they would see you and they would have some kind of reaction to you, whether consciously or unconsciously. If it's a friend of yours, they will feel, it's you, my friend. Oh, they'll smile and they say, hey, how's it going? If it's your mother, it's a different attitude. It's a different field. And or they would interact with your field in a different way. So notice, this is easier perhaps to see when we look at other people. If you're in a public space, or the next time you're in a public place, notice what it's like to move your eyes around the space. And you'll notice pretty quickly that for most people at least, it's hard to move your gaze in a full 360-degree fashion. We typically don't like to look at other people. Because when we make eye contact and we look at people in the face, that is either an opportunity for confrontation and conflict or for deep intimacy. And socially, we're conditioned not to do that. It's somehow uncomfortable because we want to avoid falling into these extreme, emotions with another person. But what this does is it creates resistance in our gaze. We suddenly can't look directly at another person or fully in all directions as we would be able to do if we were alone. Similarly, notice the way in which your voice changes when you're around other people, or when you're in public, or when you're in a room with others. You are typically more expressive when you're in a room with your friends or people you know well than in a room of strangers, where you're not laughing and shouting and having a rolling good time. So already you should be able to start to notice in these ways, and from your own life experience, that the fields of others, when we are around other conscious beings, who they are and how they are will affect how we are. And this goes deep. This may seem like common sense, and it is, but the implications of this are profound. It affects our body posture. It affects our breathing. It affects what emotions we can feel, and even what thoughts we can think. And most importantly, it affects even the role that we play in our lives. It affects the role that we might play in our home, in a friend circle, in our community, and in the world. If you have a friend that is the kind of outgoing, loud one, sometimes you will cede that space to them, and you will take a different pole. You'll suddenly get quieter and more introspective. Then you're with your other friend who is even maybe quieter and more introspective than you become the loud one. You become open and charismatic. Once we start to notice the different ways in which we show up and how the different fields of other human beings affect us, we can then start to really widen and strengthen our own field. So why is this important? Because as we go through life, if we want to have a stable inner world, one that is free, where we are powerful and free and totally in integrity with who we are, we need to be able to have to calm the chaos that is around us, the emotional call and response, push and pull of other people and social expectations. We need to remove the reactivity that we typically have and have had since childhood, been developing, of, if someone is angry at you and your reactive response is to shrink and please them, or to run away, or conversely, to get big and angry and start a flame war with them. These are reactive responses. And being able to free ourselves from these reactive responses allows us the agency and control to be able to show up in a situation exactly as needed. Not as we are being forced to react out of habit, but as needed in the situation. And this is the basis of social and emotional mastery. It's not that you are a leaf being carried downstream, where rocks and logs are pushing and pulling you in all these different directions. You are more like a little, like a motorboat, where you get to choose. You get to choose which direction and what speed and how you go down this river. Maybe a canoe or a kayak is a little bit better analogy. But you have control as opposed to being pushed around just like a leaf. So, one last point about this is, not only do you have inner control over your own life, but once you really have stability, you're able to actually start affecting the lives of others and the world around you in a positive way. So, how do we do this? How do we liberate ourselves from the influence of other people's psychosocial fields, psychic fields, energy fields, whatever you want to call it. Well, the first thing to understand is that these constraints on how we, our gaze, how we comport ourselves in public, the things we feel and think, and our roles in the world, these constraints are illusions. There are no constraints. We, in fact, are totally free to be and act and become anyone we want to be. And really, as Michael Meade says, it's not so much that we can become anyone we want to be, it's that we get the privilege of becoming the person that we are meant to be. And all of these social fields, the fields of others, their expectations, their desires and anger and whatever, they push and pull us so that we are not free to become the person we're meant and called to be. To be able to understand, really understand, the illusion of these constraints and gain the freedom from them, we have to first understand what it's like to not have these constraints, or at least to lessen their volume dramatically. And the way to do that, the easiest, most effective way to do this, is to go outside, really outside, and find a place where you are alone, where you are in solitude. And when you get there, wander around, really sink into the place, and make sure that you can't see anyone else, they can't see you, no one else can hear you. If you shouted, would somebody else hear you? And there's no risk of somebody popping up out of nowhere around a corner and seeing you. Solitude. This allows us to start to expand our psychic field. It will naturally expand when we walk into a vast canyon or landscape or field. You'll start to feel this openness. And that is your psychic field beginning to expand and beginning to fill up this vastness where there are no other conscious beings that you can see. There are no other judgments, expectations, desires of anyone else. It's just you. And when you are in this place, and you could do this at home, but I really recommend a vast and open natural space for this. When you are alone there, start to just notice. Notice what degrees of freedom you gain by being in this space. See if you can swivel your head around. Can you look in all 360, everywhere around you? Can you try different postures? Can you go like this? Can you go like this? Can you do different expressions? Can you pretend to be someone else? And just notice the way in which you have all of these different degrees of freedom that if you were in a room or even walking along with somebody through this natural space, you probably wouldn't be able to naturally, easily, or as easily embody all of them. So that's the first thing to really notice when you're in this space. And as you really sink into this state of being, with your psychic field expanded out in this vast, beautiful landscape, the next thing to do is to get your field deep, to really ground down. So to make the center, make this, your psychic field not only come from your head, but really from your stomach, from your belly, and even further down, even from your legs. Like really ground in to the earth and feel like you are the center of your world. It's surprising how often the center of our world might be somewhere else. in a romantic crush or partner, in our children, or our work, or our families, or guilt or anxiety about the future or the past. When we take our center back and make it solid in ourselves, in our gut, in the center of our bodies, we take back our lives. And instead of this kind of off-kilter thing where the psychic center of your life is somewhere else outside of your body, you bring it into your body. And that is what makes our psychic field deep and grounded. So expand the psychic field, take up the space, feel the freedom, ground deeply into your body, and the next thing is to really make it strong. So imagine you're out there. Imagine what it would be like if another person suddenly did pop up and appear. What kind of state would you need to be in to see this other person but be completely unmoved? And what I mean by that is, like, if you're feeling good before this person shows up, if you're feeling centered and awake and alive, then that shouldn't change when this other person shows up. Imagine if they are distraught or angry at you for whatever reason. What kind of state would you have to be in for that not to affect you? Not that you're ignoring their anger, their feelings, their, whatever state they're in. You see it and you acknowledge it, and you will engage with it. But first and foremost, it doesn't affect you. What kind of state, just imagine, would you have to be in for that to be true? And see if you can start to really embody that state. You're alone at this point still, and it's important to do this while you're alone because it's very hard, exponentially harder to do this when you're around other people. Start to really embody it. And one technique that I really emphasize to start to strengthen your field is to let your energy flow outward. And by energy here, I mean psychological, emotional energy. Imagine that from this center that we've created, you can allow an energy to flow out of you. Your essence flows out of you. And it creates this kind of shining field, this field that other people can almost feel when they're in your presence. And it's like it provides this kind of wind or like magnetic push, and it's constantly moving outward. Now, the flavor of this energy, it can be anything. It can be joyous, it can be hostile, it could be fearful, it could be desirous. What I recommend you place at the center of your energy field is love. And I can go on and on about why love more than anything else, but it is the quintessential emotion that will unlock all doors. It is the thing that people are most looking for. It is the thing that is most attractive. And it is the thing that really, when you come up against somebody else who has an angry or a hard or a combative or a fearful energy field, it's the thing that will soften and heal whatever it is that they are experiencing. And it will heal and fortify whatever anxiety, instability, chaos is within you, and it will stabilize it. So imagine, as you're out in this field, this love flowing outward. And it's flowing out from your center, and And you're not floating around people. You are grounded, stable, as this love flows outward. Now, the next thing to do is to start to try and practice in your head. What would it be like when you go back into society? When you go back to see a friend of yours, or passing a stranger on the path or on the street, see if you can, in your head, play act what it would be like to keep this energy flowing towards them. How would you look at them? How would you say hello? How would they respond to you? And keep on practicing. Keep on running through in your head these different scenarios, because this practice is essential. It's 100 times easier to do this on your own than when you're actually face to face with another human being. So you really want to take the time until you are fully, completely, just feel good and confident and strong in your energy field before you try and go out and start interacting with people. And honestly, this may take more than one go. This may not be, you may not do this exercise and then come back and suddenly you have a nice strong field that is impermeable. No, it may take some practice. So as you're out there, start addressing trees or plants or animals as if they're sentient beings, and in a way you can say that they are. Start talking with them, having conversations, and letting the same love flow outwards, the same expansive field that you've cultivated, centered and grounded and flowing out. Keep this going. Start having these conversations. And when you feel comfortable and confident, start to go back out, return to the world, and start to see if you can keep this flowing. First with a friend that you like, somebody that you just love being around them. See if you can walk into your house and keep this going. Oftentimes when we walk into a place we are familiar with, we'll just shut up back into our typical way of expressing ourselves, or our typical emotional configuration. When we enter into a relationship we know well, somebody knows us, and there's a kind of set channel or dynamic that's been established over a long period of time, we can instantly, without noticing it, return to that habitual way of acting. This is especially difficult with parents and family members, because they expect a certain way that we will act, a certain psychic field that we have cultivated over years and years. So really be mindful about how the presence of other people is affecting you, and see if you can keep this expansive, flowing, loving energy flowing outward. And when you meet somebody who has a different psychic energy field, and let's say you notice that they're trying to exhibit some pressure onto you, maybe consciously or unconsciously, resist the urge to get stiff and hard. Because there's a natural temptation that once you start to see these fields, how your field interacts with other people's psychic fields, you want to instinctively sometimes stiffen up and say, this is now a battle. This is a battle, this is a fight, and I'm going to make sure that you do not push around and affect my field. I'm going to be the one that does that to you. Or at least we stiffen up and say, no, I'm not going to change. I'm not going to be affected by you. But that's not the place to be. Because even when we stiffen up like that, we are being affected by this other person. We may be more consciously making a choice there, but we are still not free because we are reacting. We are reacting in a way that is compulsory, and it is not. It is not always what is needed in a situation. Being able to flow outward with love, to allow this energy to flow outward, we're able to really listen to what another person is bringing, what kind of needs, what kind of state they're in. And when we can listen, really listen, then we can decide from our own place of centeredness, from our own place of expandedness, we can decide how to react and what is needed in the present moment for the well-being of this person, for the well-being of your relationship, whatever it may be. Or maybe for even your own well-being. Even if a person is being immensely negative, hostile even. If you sense that and recognize, right now I'm not in a place to help this person, I need to remove myself. So we want to start introducing relationships and interactions at a low intensity to gradually higher levels of intensity. You want to start with friends. You want to start with people that you like. You want to then go on to people like your family, who maybe you have some tension with. Eventually, you will feel strong enough to meet with people who are in places of authority, or people who have been hostile to you in the past, who you have really negative associations with, and you'll be able to walk into their presence and into their space. And you'll be able to hold yourself steady. And as you practice this, as your psychic field gets stronger, and you become more grounded in your inner world, the degrees of freedom that you experienced when you were alone, they start to open up when you're among others. This is when you really start moving to the place of charisma, of freedom, of someone who, when people look at them, they're just in awe. Like, how do you do that? How are you so open and alive and happy and free? Because you are centered and grounded, and you see through the illusions of constraint that are put upon us by all of these psychic energy fields. And again, this is not magic. This is psychology and sociology. This is how the human brain has evolved to sync up and coordinate with other people in a tribe, in a community. And it's essential for our survival, but really for our own empowerment, to become a totally sovereign, stable individual. We have to be able to see through the illusions of these constraints. And then we can really show up as our full selves, as the people that we are meant to be. And that is a beautiful feeling. That is liberation. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you want a PDF about how to achieve this state on your own, click on the link in the description, and it'll take you to a free PDF checklist where you can go down and really start to practice and work with strengthening your energy field, your psychosocial field. So click on the description, link in the description, get the PDF, and if you want more videos like this, hit the subscribe button and the little bell icon, and I'll see you in the next video.